Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Printed. I'm your host, Vanessa Gomez, and we're back with our department series. This time, we're going to be talking about a new department for us, the operations department. As always, we're going to be talking with our guest about her experience in the industry and any specific career advice for people who are just getting started. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm so excited for today's episode because we're diving into a new department for us, the operations department. And our guest today attended the Savannah College of Arts and Design, where she earned the BFA in metals and jewelry with a minor in art history, as well as an MFA in graphic design. She has always been passionate about art and fashion, and as a matter of fact, her career began in corporate fashion merchandising and operations. In 2004, she joined the Brazos bookstore as a gift buyer, and soon she became the general manager. Now, in summer of 2023, she joined Coffee House Press as the director of operations. Please, everyone, welcome Ulrika Moats to Printed. Hi, Ulrika. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time and reaching out to me. This is so exciting. So thank you.
Of course, you're ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Well, I always like to start with a section that I call the What Are You section to warm things up. So, Ulrika, what are you reading, watching, listening? It doesn't have to
Oh.
be with books, but it can be anything that you're enjoying at the moment.
So what I'm reading right now is Chronality by Lena Wolf. So I'm super excited. Actually, I didn't read it when Brazos did it for a book group. So I'm super excited to dive into that. What I'm listening to is probably a mix that I've made that has a mix of like old school 90s punk and goth and industrial. So that's what I'm listening to right now and watching, not really watching too much, but I've been reading a lot, especially with everything that's been happening in Minneapolis. I don't go out as much as I used to. So I've been pretty much just spending my time at home, going to work like twice a week is where we are, and just really trying to catch up on all the reading I haven't been able to do between reading for Coffee House and then just reading the things that were on my to be read list.
Well, from my part, I've been reading. I'm still reading for the audience. They know I'm still reading Wild Reverence from Rebecca Ross. I really love it, but I haven't had time to go through it. But I'm reading that right now. I've been listening to a lot of Olivia Dean. Like it's a new artist, and I'm loving her. And she just won a Grammy, so I've been listening a lot of her music. And I've been watching just the Olympics because they're very big right now in Canada. We have a lot of things there. So I'm just been following along with that. So yeah, that's great. Now I just want to get started. I want to get started with something simple, maybe. But can you tell us a bit more about? We just mentioned at the beginning you're the director of operations of Coffee House Press. So can you tell us a bit more about what Coffee House Press does, what they focus on, kind of what the list looks like for those who don't know the press right now, and what kind of like attracted you to join the press?
Coffee House Press is an independent press in Minneapolis. We've been around for over 40 years. It started off as Toothpaste Press from Alan Klumborg, who is the founder of the organization. So we started off doing a lot of poetry. We do both creative nonfiction, poetry, essays, and fiction. We've really, for our fiction, has been, when we're looking at translation, has been pretty much either Spanish or Latin American. We just published our first book in Arabic, Sandcatcher, not last fall, but the previous fall. We are getting ready to publish our first book in Czech this coming up fall. So it's a small team. It's six of us. I started, there was like around 9 or 10 of us. So we're definitely a small team. One of the things that I love about Coffee House is the mission. So we are a nonprofit. And so, we also rely on a lot of grant writing, getting grants. We do campaigns for fundraising, but really it's about getting literature out there that might not find a home and authors having a voice that might not find a home at another press, especially a big five. I've always loved Coffee House. I was reading Coffee House books when I was working at the bookstore. And which most people may or may not know, Mark Haber, who is our manager, our marketing manager and acquisitions director, also is basically a coffee house author. He is my husband. So I've been reading a lot, and how I got to coffee house is like a lot of things in my career. It was not a very linear piece. Mark got the job as the marketing director. We were living in Houston, Texas, and I moved here with the idea that, oh, I'm going to take some few months off. It was kind of crazy going through the bookstore during COVID, and was never planning on working. We worked together there as well, working together, but our executive director asked Mark if she could speak to me. And so she did, and my 3 months turned into a week once we moved here, and I've been with Coffee House Press ever since.
That's awesome. And I love that you've always been involved with the press in one way or another.
Yeah.
So it was kind of meant to be at the end.
I think so. It's kind of it's I always make the joke, and I used to make the joke to my mom that I always wanted to work in publishing. I wanted to get an
Hmm.
English major initially,
Hmm.
and she's like, "What are you going to do with it?" I'm like, "I want to work in publishing." And I then was an international political science major, and then got an art degree. So working at the press, I was like, "Oh, the things I talked about in high school is actually now where I'm now working." It's like long way to get here, but I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. No, you have no idea how many people I've talked that are in publishing right now. And even it's my experience myself. I did wanted to get like an English lit degree too, but I ended up going for like a journalism degree, worked in marketing, and then found my way back to the industry somehow. And then it's with so many people, whether they work in design departments, as marketers, they have had like these crazy experiences where they always loved books but they didn't get into the industry at first, and then they knew someone who knew someone, and then they ended
yeah."
up like staying in the industry. I guess that's how it happens for most of people, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
it definitely it's I think a lot of people think that you have a straight track from English
Hmm.
degree or an MFA and you get into publishing, and
Right.
some people do.
Hmm.
But also too, everyone's path has always kind of been a little bit different.
Yes.
We have I know people who've worked as we did in bookstores who became very close to a lot of indie presses, and also do some like people in big fives that have managed to go that way. Everyone's route is always different. So it's
Yeah.
always kind of nice to see how we all managed to get to where we were, because it was not always the same way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now I kind of want to go back a little bit just because for me and maybe for you as well, like it kind of makes sense when we say like the word like director of operations. We know what
Yes.
that means. But if you're getting started in the industry, most people have no idea that maybe that role exists or what the role even entails in a publishing house. So can you explain to the audience what does a director of operations do, and how it is crucial kind of like for the functioning of a publishing house?
So I'll start with this caveat. Every publishing house, their titles and responsibilities always seem to be completely different. So my job as the director of operations of Coffee House might look very different than the director of operations from Feminist Press. So you usually kind of morph it to what your work needs to be, what's kind of it needs to look like. So it's not like a clear cut, it's like an editorial or publicity, like this is kind of what you do. So I started, one of the key things when I started was just kind of going back through and trying to get everything in a sense organized. From our internal inventory to working with our production editor at the time on our profit and loss sheets, to really making sure that we were keeping track of like our rights and permissions, helping out with development pieces. I do a lot of our basically at the end of a grant you have to submit all of your like your all of your records and all of your financials. So I take care of all of that for all of our grant writing as well. So I also to help with all the grant writing is piece of it as well, because we really do work together as a team. And that was kind of the beginning of what I was doing. And since I've been there, I now am basically I'm the person who deals with all of rights and permissions. So besides keeping like the grant writing done and helping out with development, helping out with marketing, kind of doing all of those pieces, making sure our inventory both in-house, because we do sell things off of our website, we sell books from our website, as well as working with our distributor, also to working with the production team. I, in the past year or so, I've taken over our rights and permissions. So I am like the key hub between selling our rights to different either anthologies, to some of our sub agents. So working with a lot of our sub agents in different countries to give them the catalog so they can see what coffee house is producing and if they would like to basically buy those foreign rights. I'm kind of the conduit between those pieces. And as I said, we've now gone to 6 people. I now do a lot of our production. So we did have a separate production manager. So I now work with our editorial director and we make the decisions of just kind of I'm now a little bit more. I also too figured out like how many books we were printing, like how many galleries we were printing, where do we think. So I worked really closely with our production team, and now that's pretty much where I also live. So I work with all of our cover designers, getting contracts, talking about covers, making the decisions with the team. Which covers are we going to be selecting? I also do work a little bit further with some of our distributor, and so now it evolves as it goes through. So a lot of hats, but it's really enjoyable.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I wanted to ask, like, with all these tasks that you're mentioning, because you take care of a lot, like
Yeah,
now that you're like enlisting all the tasks that you do, I bet that you need like a lot of skills to take care of those tasks. Like if someone wants to be part, as you said, like maybe operations looks
yeah.
different from house to house, but if someone in the future wants to be part of like an operations team, what do you think are like the main skills that they might need? And it can be
Okay.
kind of like the top five. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
like a whole list, so we don't.
No, I think one of the main skills too is being a really good communicator because
Mm,
as the director of operations, you really are communicating with every
absolutely.
department within the publishing house.
Hmm.
So being able to communicate not only what you need from others, but also to being able to communicate with what they need from you. So that way, and having it's a really good skill. So both written, verbal is a really big piece. Being a very good critical thinker is a big piece too, because you really kind of need to think outside sometimes of the box, or to say that you're starting this process here and what steps do you need to take to get to like point B. So being able to critically think about solutions, what might be a challenge, how to head that off maybe further down the line. Time management is huge, and really being left to scheduling the time that you need, but also to being flexible in that time. We make jokes that you come into work one day thinking that that's going to be your task, only to find out that the task that you thought you were doing might not happen until 4 days from now because something else has come up that that really needs your like attention. And really just being flexible, because everything is not you're usually asked to do a lot of different things, and you need to be flexible in the ideas of what you can get done, what needs to be done, learning to put something aside because that might not be the top priority that you need to be working on that day. And with all of that together, I think that's a really good skill set.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing like a lot of like project management skills,
Yeah.
which it definitely shows like if you're handling like with different departments or different projects, you need to be able to organize, to communicate with everyone effectively. So that makes sense. So for anyone listening, if you want to be part of operations, like those are kind of the skills that you will want to work
Yeah.
on and like show that you have like experienced in. And now I kind of want to ask something that it may sound a little bit funny, but I have asked this to a lot of people in publishing because I have felt like publishing sometimes it's kind of understood by the people that work in publishing, but no, not by the people outside of publishing. Like they just like buy the end product, they buy the books, maybe the main people that they recognize is the author. So sometimes they don't know what happens inside a publishing house, and sometimes they might have a lot of misconceptions about what each job does. So talking with people that are not in the industry, have you found that there are any misconceptions when you mention what you do for work and they just assume things that may not be true? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I've heard so many things that might not be true. Can you share some of those with us?
I think people think, I mean, it's kind of funny, and I also too am in charge of our intern program. So a lot of the times too, people are like, oh, this is the thing I want to do. And they don't really realize that especially if they think that they want to do editorial, but they
Yeah.
don't always realize that you can still be creative. You still get a lot of writing done. You still get a lot of
Mhm.
interaction in other departments in a publishing house,
Yeah.
especially one that is as small as we are. So if you're in a big five, I think, a lot of times you have a certain lane that you're in, but there's a lot of different hands if you're working with like an independent publisher because we don't have a team of like 35 or 40. I also too, I think that people don't realize how slow publishing is and how long it takes by the time that a manuscript is accepted to the time that the book ends up getting into bookstores and into people's hands. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, it just like takes a year. It might for some authors, some publishers, but for the most case, a book can get submitted and it might take like maybe 2.5 years before it actually ends up being a physical product that someone can touch. So I think that's always the big misconception of, oh, a book just kind of comes out. You're like, there are multiple hands, there are multiple revisions, there's design concepts, there's all of those. It's like working with the author, it's getting the tour together if you're doing it, it's all the publicity. And I also, too, I think that people get the misconception that one book is what we all it's like you're working in seasons, so there's always a lot of different starts and stops. So right now we're getting ready for our spring season, but we're now working for fall season, so we're still getting working with the people for spring tours, galleys, finalizing cover art, while we're now editing galleys, doing all of that for fall, while we're now looking for spring and getting authors and things ready that they need for spring of 2027. So it moves slowly, but there's a lot of like bits and pieces. So especially when we get interns, they're like, "Oh, I just thought you guys kind of worked." I'm like, "No, we're in one season. We're looking at another season, and then we're still having an eye on another season. And our fiscal year is not a calendar year. So for us, at least, so that's another thing that people kind of are like, "Oh, but everything." Like, no, it doesn't work from like January to December. So I think that that's the bigger pieces. But a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't take that long for a book. I'm like, oh, no, but it does. It's a lot longer and it's a lot more in detailed and things that you are required to do, not only from us as a publisher, but working with our distributor and things that they need. And also, too, sometimes, the author comes back and was like, I would like to, I want to add a few more pages to my manuscript. Do I have enough time? So it's like scrambling to get all of that done. So I think really that how time moves in publishing and all the little bits and pieces that all tie together.
Absolutely. And that's so true. When I started in publishing, although I love books and I have loved books my whole life, one thing that I really had to learn is exactly what you're saying is that publishing works in seasons. So right now, as you're saying, everyone is looking to fall, but everyone is looking to publicity in spring because those are the books that are coming out right now. But they are also planning a spring of 2027. So
Yep.
everyone is looking kind of ahead. So that's one thing. If definitely if you want to work in a publishing house, you have to learn that the calendar is not like the calendar in any other company. It's extremely different. Yeah, but that's
Your
also what
calendar
makes
kind
it
of needs
exciting.
your calendar kind of needs a calendar in publishing.
Yes.
Like it just needs another calendar to get everything situated.
Yes, it does. Like everyone right now is thinking about summer. Publishing people are thinking about fall and holidays.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So you just need to learn that. And that's, you know what? That's actually the perfect way to go into our next section. As you mentioned, you all are also involved with the internship program at Coffee House Press.
Mhm.
So I want to get into a section about like talking about more advice for people that want to kind of get started in the industry. And some people do get started through internships.
Yes.
So now talking about independent publishers, I guess I want to ask you, what's one thing that you wish maybe people starting in the industry knew about working at an indie press?
I think the one of the big key
Mhm.
pieces is really how collaborative it is and
Mm.
how much your job, either marketing, operations, editorial, publicity, we all kind of work together. And there's multiple things that your piece of that pie is a part of a whole pie. And I think a lot of the times we do find, especially when we're in like interviewing interns and they're like, well, I kind of want to do, editorial, or I want to do this. And they get in and they're like, oh, I can still write back copy for like, that's part of publicity. I'm like, yeah, that's not the right. So I think they are all kind of shocked about how a skill set can transfer to different departments and how we all work together, because I think people are so focused on what they think like a publicity or marketing job is going to be, and not really necessarily realizing that those also too work with the editorial, that then also works with like, rights and permissions, that also works with different pieces. So I mean, our publicist now, Bella, she was an intern. We hired her as an intern last fall, and then she was done with her internship and she is now a publicist. But she started off wanting to do editorial, but we needed someone to do a couple of other things. And as we went through, she was like, oh, she's like, there's a lot more like creative writing and things that I didn't think I could do working in like marketing and publicity. I was like, yeah, like you've written the back copy for two of our books. We like, you're now, that's your words, it's your work. And, she was like, I didn't think that would be the case. I'm like, yeah. So I think being open to kind of see where people, like where you can fit in, where people might think you could fit in, because it will open up other opportunities.
I've heard that what you're describing so much, especially starting out in the industry, and it makes sense because when you're doing an internship, you're just kind of trying out the industry and where
Exactly.
your skills might fit. So, do you think that's the key? Like, as you're saying, if you're starting out, just try to be open to anything,
Yeah.
like, try to be open to any department, even if your heart is maybe for a lot of people in editorial, like, just
Yeah.
try to be open.
Yeah, I think trying to be open also to realize that, you know, you might need a few internships to kind of like
Hmm.
get in. I can, I know people who've had like three or four internships before they
Hmm.
found a home in
Yep.
publishing, and just kind of being open to what that looks like. And
Hmm.
also, too, I think a really big piece is really knowing the publisher that you're interning for and having an idea. Not necessarily, you don't need to read the whole catalog, you don't need to know every single thing we've published, but to have an understanding of who that publisher is. Does it fit with the things that you're interested in? And really kind of spending some time realizing that this is going to be a place that I want to internship because I like what they're doing and I like their mission if they're a nonprofit and I like the books that they're doing, versus just going through and saying, well, I'm just trying to break into the industry and I'm applying for internships anywhere so that way I can have something on my resume, which is good. But you want to also to be kind of like passionate about where you're interning, because you will be spending, sometimes up to 6 months there, and you want to make sure that what they're doing is something that you're interested in, depending upon what tasks you're going to be having.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, I think I have heard that so much that when applying to internships or really to any job in the publishing industry, you need to show your passion for where you
Yeah,
are going to work because that those are the catalogs, those are the titles that you're going to work on. So just having that passion and showing that it can get you to the finish line really when it comes to getting a job. And now
absolutely.
I kind of want to ask, like, when people go through internships right now, when they're applying through internships, the job market has changed so much. So you have people applying maybe from educational backgrounds or people with work experience. Do you think that having an educational background to apply to an internship is kind of useful, or can you demonstrate kind of your passion and your skills through work experience? What's your take on that?
I think, sometimes if you have, if you're looking through, and maybe it's a little bit different if you're trying to apply for like a big
Hmm.
five because they
Yeah.
are so siloed in what they're doing. But having some work experience is always great. Being really passionate about, why you want to be there, what you can
Yeah.
bring to the publisher, what do you see yourself doing? As you said, sometimes a lot of people do want to work in editorial, and realizing that sometimes your editorial skill set might not necessarily match with what is needed in a publishing house, especially if they do a lot more experimental work, things of that
Hmm.
nature. But to be kind of
Yeah.
open to the possibility of finding a different section within that publishing house, because then you're still being left to most likely work with other people and be able to help in that process. Really, being passionate, having an understanding of what they do, if they're nonprofit, really understanding what their mission is and, why they do the things that they do. I think also to being prepared for your interview with, questions that you want to ask and what you want of the team, because we interview in a team. So a lot of the times, if you're going to possibly be working in marketing and publicity, you're interviewing with myself and that team. If you're working possibly in like doing editing, you're working with myself and our editorial director. Our ED sometimes sits in on our interviews, but really having a list of questions that you want to ask, being thoughtful in what you have. Also, too, I think it's easy because a lot of people are wanting an internship and wanting to be able to stand out, making sure that even if you're just inquiring about, are you open for an internship? Is there any openings? Attach your cover letter and your resume, because that means that that's one less step that both of you, the person from who's reading it and the person who's applying it, just attach it anyway. If you're inquiring, attach your cover letter, attach your resume. If you have references, attach those, because then it's not going to be a lot of back and forth with that piece. And also to be patient. So if when you're looking at our website, it does say that our internships are closed just because it's just so many people, but we do go back through, and right now we'll start to interview for summer in May. So being open and letting people know where you want to be, like what season do you possibly want to be interning in, any information that you can give the hiring manager for your internship is great, because it's not like, it's not me going back to you or someone else going back to you and saying, okay, thank you, can you please attach your cover letter and your resume? When are you looking for your internship? So giving people a lot of those will help you stand out, and to see if people who are like asking inquiries or submitting resumes, it's a big piece of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great advice for anyone that wants to apply to an internship, specifically with Coffee House Press. And I want to ask, now that we're talking about the internship specifically at the press, are your internships, for the audience listening and they may want to apply, are they remote? Are they hybrid? Are they in person? I know that that has changed with COVID, so I just want to put the question out there.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So we've had it's been a little bit of both. So we've had some of our interns that have been completely remote,
Okay.
just because of either location, or they might be working full time
Mm,
at another
mhm.
job and then still interning for us. Our
Okay.
interns work anywhere between like 10 to 20 hours a week. Sometimes, it's in person. Usually if you're doing a lot of our editorial pieces, it works a little bit better if you're in person, so that way you
Hmm.
can talk to our editorial director. Or even we still will basically do like virtual meetings weekly to check in. So it's a little bit of both. Sometimes too, there's times, you're in Canada, we're in Minnesota, that you can't actually come into work. So it
Hmm.
might be a hybrid
Right.
day just because weather is not allowing you to basically go anywhere. So
Hmm.
it's a really kind of a big mix between the two. At least for us, if you're hybrid, you'll have like your department or who you might work with. And then it's like kind of like a weekly check-in with them, just to see if you have any questions. Also too, working remotely takes a lot more communication skills than if you're in
Yes. Yeah.
person, because if you're get caught up on something, feel free to to send an email, ask a question. No one's
Hmm.
ever going to fault you for asking too many questions. So we do like a weekly check-in with our remote interns as well.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah. And does the internship, as you were saying, some internships I've seen, like it's 4 months, some are 6 months. I know that some are maybe up to a year. How does that work with Coffee House Press? How long are the
Three to
internships?
four,
Sorry.
usually three to
Okay.
four. So
Hmm.
it's usually like a 3 to 4 month period. If it's an unpaid internship, it's 3 to 4 months. As I said, sometimes the summers look a little bit different. We just kind of revamped our internship program last year. So sometimes you're only in the office if you're working in the office a couple days out of the week. It kind of depends, because we do have other interns that are either still working on their MFA or they have a full time job. So they kind of work their internship on their days off. We've had other interns that are pretty much with us the entire week. So they will come in for maybe like 4 hours for, a week or like a day for like that period of time until they hit their 20. So it really is kind of open. We're very flexible in making sure that they can get what they need to get out of an internship, so when they leave coffee house, that they can this is a skill set that they have, and these are things that they can talk about that they've worked on, as well as, if they are working, if they're in school and they need some more flexibility, it's very easy for us to say back and say, okay, this Tuesdays and Thursdays are your 2 days that you're going to be in the office for maybe 5 hours on Tuesday, and then you're going to be in for maybe 8 hours on Thursday, or kind of breaking it apart to three. So it really depends on their schedule, our needs, and making sure that everyone is getting everything that they need in order to make sure that they're successful in their internship.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. I'm so happy to hear that it is flexible, because I think that's what a lot of people are also looking in the industry, because they might have, as you're saying, they might be doing their MFA, they might have
Yeah,
another job. So having an internship that offers that flexibility, it's so good. And now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit, and just as when people are getting into the industry, some of them are so scared because they don't have a network of people that they know within publishing. They don't know how to approach people to ask maybe questions. So, do you think that maybe just taking that step and being brave and networking can help you get into the industry?
absolutely. I mean, I've had like like informational interviews with people. I know our
Hmm.
old publicist did the same thing too, of people just reaching out, not
Hmm.
necessarily for an internship, not, a lot of the
Yes.
times they are undergrads and they're like, I want to work in publishing. I don't really
Hmm.
understand like how publishing works. And so they'll email and say, can we have an informational interview? And anyone on our staff has been more than happy to sit down with someone for an hour and say, okay, what questions do you have? Like, how can I help you? If I can't help you and you want to know more questions, I can go ahead and get you in touch with someone else on our team that might be where your interest might be peaking, or what you think that you might want to do. So reaching out to those people, sometimes they might say, it might take me a little bit of time, we'll get back to you. But if you find, a press that you really love and you love their work and you're excited, see if there's a way for you to, a lot of the times there's like an info email, like just a generic like info email. Go through and reach out. And if you don't get a response back, sometimes it might just be, busy scheduling periods of time. Things are kind of, you might get kind of lost in everything that's happening. So a follow up email is not necessarily a bad thing to do as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of like slowly start to kind of build that. And people are really, I have found, very helpful and want to kind of share that information with people who are new and coming in, who might not necessarily fully get what it looks like from our end, and are more than happy to kind of like share the wealth and let people kind of know.
Yes. And you know what? For anyone listening, that has been my personal experience, exactly what you're describing. Anyone that I have reached out to, they are all so kind and they are so willing to share the knowledge that they have and what the industry is about. Even with all the guests of the podcast, like have all been so willing to kind of share with like maybe like an audience that has no idea what publishing is about, what publishing really is. So yeah, just don't be scared of networking. You'll
Yeah.
find that publishing people are so kind and so generous with their time, and it is worth it. Um, and kind of to end this section, I want to ask you, if you could go back to the beginning of your career, what advice would you give your younger self now knowing everything you know?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to think. Probably not to take on more than you think you can do, which has
Mm,
always been my thing. Like, I've always been very much so, oh, if someone can't do it, I'll go ahead and take care of it. You'll burn yourself out very quickly, and you're not going to be good to whomever you're working for. You're not going to be good to yourself, both physically and mentally. So knowing that, being excited to basically have an opportunity, take those opportunities, but don't do it at the risk of not doing a good job, or still doing a good job and realizing that you are completely so burnt out because you've taken on all these extra responsibilities that now you just are basically like shell shocked.
yes. Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah, don't burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Like know your limits.
Absolutely. And there's going to be more opportunities.
Yeah.
There's going to be more, especially if you're working. Me doing rights and permissions when it's not something I thought I really wanted to do, but I was in
Yes.
charge of keeping track of it from a financial standpoint. And then when it came, I was like, okay, I now have a little bit more. We've gotten operations and things running well that now I can take this piece on. And then when we were looking at the production piece of it, I was like, okay, well, I have the production experience when I first started because I was kind of helping the people transition and kind of sitting in on calls and doing those things. And so now there's times that I'm like, okay, I can take on a little chunk of that because other pieces are now able enough to be moved aside. So there will be opportunities. So don't think that if you're starting and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this, and I want to do this thing, and I want to do this thing, and I have opportunities, they'll still come back around. It might not be There's going to be time. It might not come back around when you think it's going to be, and it might not look the way that you think it's going to be, but it will happen. And even once you start working, spend time with those people if you're working in like public, like in publicity, if you can spend time with people in the editorial department, they will be still to the same thing of like an internship. Don't be afraid to talk to other people in other departments and ask questions and say, hey, how do you do these things? Because you never know when you might be enough to make a move to a different department. And if you're having those conversations with the people that you're working with, they'll know that you're interested in. They'll know what skill set you have. They will be enough to tell you, oh, you want to be working in editorial. Here's are some things that you can do to basically improve your skill set, or here's some projects that we can give to you that you can possibly be a part of. So, as you said, be brave.
Yeah. Yeah. Just reach out. Well, I have asked you a lot of questions, so we're gonna have a fun break and we're gonna do our literary rapid fire quiz, which are just like questions that you can answer quickly and
Okay.
you don't have to overthink. So the first one is, what is your favorite book genre?
Literary fiction, usually
Okay.
something that's a little bit darker.
Oh, nice. What's your go-to author or an author that you're always happy to read?
Oh, that's hard because I don't really reread books. I have to think about that one. I don't know. I'm not a
Oh,
person who rereads something over and over
mhm.
again.
Yeah.
It depends. I don't really. I think if you're going to ask me that right now, would be Lena Wolf
Okay,
is
we'll
an
take
author
that.
that I will go back to. Yeah,
We'll take that. Perfect. What's your preferred book format? Like paperback, hardcover,
hardcover.
with Okay,
Hardcover all
good.
day, every day. I am a person, even when I was younger, I would be like, can
Mhm,
you order me the hardcover? They're like, you're holding the paperback. I'm like, I want the
mhm.
hardcover. Yeah, hardcover.
Okay, perfect. Do you like to buy or borrow books more?
Bye.
Okay. What's one book that you wish that you could read for the first time again?
Hmm. I would have to say Chelsea Summers' book. Pretty
Okay.
much like anything that she's written. She's written a novella and then she's written a novel. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Nice. Do you have any reading beverages, tea, coffee, anything that you like to drink while you're reading?
Um, Tea and sometimes a nice glass of wine.
Okay, good. Um, are you a morning reader or a night reader?
Night.
Okay. Do you consider yourself a fast or a slow reader?
Fast.
Okay, great. And the last one, if you could recommend one book to everyone that is listening, what would that be?
Oof. I'm going to say DP Kapoor, and her book is Age of Vice.
Okay, perfect. Well, you survived our little rapid fire quiz. That's great. So now we can move on to the Q&A from the community. We just have four Q&As today.
Okay.
And the first one that they have is, what's the biggest task that people don't realize that operation handles? And you have mentioned a lot that operation handles, so maybe we can have kind of answered this one already, but if you have like another take on this one.
I would say one of the biggest tasks, oh God, royalty season.
Mm, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
gathering all of the information from our distributor, gathering all of the information because we do in-house sales,
Right.
gathering all of that, working with our finance manager for royalty seasons would probably be a big task.
Okay. Perfect. They're also asking what leadership skills are essential if you want to work in an operations role.
I think, as we said earlier, I
Yeah.
think communication,
Hmm.
and critical thinking and
Yes.
being flexible. Those are really good. And also, to understanding the people
Hmm.
that you work with. I think, too, because it's a different, you're working with a lot of people
Yeah.
and not everyone works the same way. So you need to adapt to people's working style and
Hmm.
how they get information and how you need to communicate with them.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The third one that we have is what part of your job do you like the most?
Oh, um, probably we share manuscripts.
Hmm.
So when we get submissions, the acquisitions, before we had an acquisitions director, our editor, if he was excited about them or wasn't necessarily too sure, we always would come together as a team. So getting new manuscripts to see what we may or may not be publishing is always super exciting.
That's yeah, that sounds super exciting. That's awesome. And the last one that we have is, and I think you already kind of mentioned this one, but they said like working in an independent publisher sometimes means wearing many hats. Do you find that that's the case where you're working?
Absolutely. Everyone does. Everyone. I mean, there's nothing that is too small or too big that
Hmm.
all of us won't do. I mean, we do throw events in our office. So it's sometimes too meaning like, hi, we need to dust and vacuum because we're having an event in like
Right.
2 days. So yeah, it's pretty much all of that.
Okay, perfect. Well, Ulrika, thank you so much for joining us today. These conversations was so amazing and it helped me, and I bet that it helped the audience learn more about
Oh, you're
operations, but
welcome.
also Coffee House Press. But before we wrap up, where can listeners follow you or follow the press and see what you're publishing?
So Instagram is a great way to
Mhm,
follow us. It's this Coffee House Press. Also to our website,
mhm.
coffeehousepress.org is great. So you'll get to see our collections we put out when we're having our new books, any announcements. So basically I would say Instagram and our website.
Okay, perfect. And one last thing before I let you go. I know that when you're starting out in the industry and maybe you have gotten many rejections, maybe you're feeling a bit down, you start kind of struggling and wondering if this industry is for you. So for those people that are struggling right now, but they really, really have a passion for the industry, could you share kind of some encouraging words that can keep them going right now through this tough time?
Publishing, especially now, is a bit of a challenge. Just from readership, from just things that especially nonprofits are like facing. Just you'll find your people. Like you'll find your place, take that time, research where you want to be, figure out, as we talked about, be brave, reach out. At some point too, even if you don't get that internship or you aren't able enough to land that position, reach back out. Sometimes too, I mean, I've had people who've interned with us, they're like, what could I have done better? What do I need to improve on? Get the feedback. And sometimes you're not going to get to publishing the way that you think you're going to. So if it doesn't work out the first couple of times, it's going to be fine. You'll doors will open for you. You'll figure it out. Just be patient with yourself and just know that, eventually you'll get there.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind
Oh, you're
words. I
oh, my
know that
pleasure.
if anyone in the audience is struggling, they're going to appreciate those. So, again, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure to meet you. And yeah, just thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like so much fun. Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode. Next episode, we're going to have more amazing guests for you. So make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of this season. You can also visit publishingguide.com for free resources and information about this season's guests. Follow us on Instagram at the Publishing Guide for updates and behind the scenes content. Remember to leave in the comments any questions that you want to see in any future Q&As. Please note that any views expressed in this podcast are personal and do not reflect the opinions of the host or guest employers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.